Hey everyone, Kelsey the Counselor here today. And today I want to talk to you all about parenting. Parenting while being aware of mental health, parenting from a place knowing that mental health is real and important, and what you can do to incorporate some of those pieces in your parenting style. Now, I'm a mother of a little kiddo, and often there's kind of that joke that, we try to be really aware and really mindful of mental health when we're raising our kiddos. And yet, in fact, it's our kiddos that struggle more because we're maybe hyper aware of it or we're really, really gentle. So it'll be interesting to see how, when I'm doing my best, how that impacts my kiddo and what my blind spots are. So if mental health is something you're new or learning about or really passionate about, just like me, and want to ensure that you're infusing that in your parenting style, check out the video I've put together. And I am really excited to hear what you think about it, if there's any things that you do to incorporate mental health in your parenting, and how your kiddos are responding and reacting to it. Now I'm going to share the presentation I have put together here. I just have to find it. Where did it go? Here it is. Okay, we're going to start at the beginning. So parenting with mental health top of mind. Yes, I'm Kelsey the Counselor. I have lots of different identities, and being a counselor is just one of them. So why does mental health matter in parenting? Well, we all have mental health. It's so interesting to me because when we say the word physical health, we think about our body, we think about doing things to keep our physical health well, we think about going for walks, getting movement, eating nourishment and nourishing food. But when we say the word mental health, there's this negative connotation, like if someone is struggling with their mental health. So when we say, oh, someone has mental health, we interpret it as, oh, they have poor mental health or they're struggling with their mental health. But the reality is we all have mental health that deserves attention, deserves to be acknowledged, and deserves to be cared for, just like our physical health does. So I want you to take a moment here, and I want you to think about a time in your life that was really low and you were really struggling. And then I want you to think about a time in your life where things were going great, you were having these peak experiences, everything was going really, really well. And now I want you to check in with yourself today, how you're doing. Are you at one of those extremes? Are you somewhere in the middle? And so we all have impacts to our mental health, whether we have a mental health diagnosis or not. We all have mental health, and it can go up and do really, really well and feel really joyful. And it can get kind of low and sluggish and groggy for a little while. And that's the human experience, to experience these diversity of feelings, of emotions. We're interacting with the world, and the world is a very interesting place these days. So we're permeable, it impacts us. And what can we do to try to remain balanced and well for ourselves, and then also teach our kiddos about that? There's a study that was done in New York, adverse childhood experiences. I have a link later on, and the link will also be below, so you can check this out if you're interested in it at all. So this study was done, and research was done to see how adverse childhood experiences impact long-term health. A lot of research was put into trying to prevent these adverse childhood experiences, because what they found was when people had more and more and more adverse childhood experiences, which might include bearing witness to violence, divorce, trauma, moves can be considered traumatic as well, or an adverse childhood experience, because you're getting dislocated and you're getting transported into a new world. So a lot of research is done on what do we do to prevent them. However, sometimes these things happen. Sometimes it's important for us to divorce our partner. Sometimes it's important for us to move or relocate. Sometimes a person in our life dies and we can't prevent that. So what do we do? Well, one of the biggest protective factors is having an adult that's attentive and attuned in the child's life. Because when we are attentive and attuned, we can check in with the kiddo, we can see how they're doing, we know them well enough to see when their behaviors might be changing a little bit, that might indicate something. And then we can respond to them and we can support them through this difficulty, through this transition. So even though these adverse experiences might happen in our child's life, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to struggle significantly if we're able to buffer that and if we're able to protect them through those difficult experiences. I want you to keep in mind that your kiddos don't have the skills to manage their emotions. Think about a time where you might have been very, very distressed. Even as an adult with the toolbox that you've created in your life, we can still get dysregulated when something significant happens. Well, your kiddo hasn't even developed the skills that you have. And so, of course, when something happens that might seem rather minor, they're going to become dysregulated. They're going to become overwhelmed. When you're able to acknowledge their experience as real, it can calm them. It teaches them it's okay to feel and express what they're feeling. And they learn that these emotions and these feelings of overwhelm do pass. And then over time, that is a part of their toolbox, being able to stay connected, be aware of their feelings that they're experiencing, and express them to somebody that they feel safe and connected to. Your children's experiences are real. Even if they don't have the language to name them or communicate them effectively, I have no doubt that they are communicating them. I can't wait to show you the quote I have at the end. It talks all about when a kiddo is expressing insignificant behaviors and disruptive behaviors. It's communication. And often in society, we're taught to squelch it, to push it down, to prevent that behavior from happening. But then what happens? Well, all those feelings and things that are going on inside that are bursting out now get suppressed and have to be dealt with inside way, way, way deep down. And that can be problematic very, very long term. So sometimes you might not see disruption or difficulties early in life, but you might see them coming up later. And that might cue you to be aware of, oh, I think there are some things going on for my kiddo that I wasn't super aware of, that I wasn't attuned to. And now I need to change and adapt what I'm doing to be able to support them, to help them move through this difficulty and find a new way to express themselves and be connected to their own emotional well-being. I went the wrong way. Here we go. There's a link as well that I'm going to post for this one. So the window of tolerance is created by Dr. Dan Siegel. Now follow my cursor here. Most people, most of the time, are able to kind of ride waves that go up and down. We feel a little bit joyful and happy. We feel a little bit sad or low. We might feel a little bit energized or anxious. We might feel a little bit tired or fatigued. But most of the time, we kind of hover within this window. What happens, however, if something significant happens, or we're really drained already and there's so many stressors coming at us, well, our waves become even bigger and they tip up and we become really, 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 really activated. Or it kind of goes the other way and that undertow gets really, really big and drags us down. So this happens for us as adults for sure. And a huge part of being aware for mental health for kiddos, actually being aware of our own mental health, trying to find a way to regulate ourselves, but then for sure being tuned into what's going on for our kiddo. So if they're really way, way up here or they're really way, way down here, it's going to indicate some information to us that something's not going on well for them and they might be struggling. They might be overwhelmed. Something's clearly not going well. So I'd encourage you to check out the window of tolerance. It's a fantastic tool to be aware of and basically indicates that most people, even though we hover in this window here in the middle, if we're under a lot of stress, we kind of tip out and become very, very hyper activated. That's kind of where that anxiety lives, difficulty to relax, or we pop down to that hypo arousal place where we're really low energy and very, very fatigued. And those are common responses when we're under a lot of stress. Common responses that parents might say, oh, you're just attention seeking. This one can actually be really hurtful to kiddos. They're not trying to do something to seek attention. They're probably seeking connection. Something's going on inside where they might feel a little lonely or a little struggly, and they need your help to co-regulate them, to ground them. And so they're reaching out to you in the way that they know how. So if your kiddo's doing something and it seems like they're trying to get your attention, great. See if there's a way that you can feel okay in responding to that need, allying with them, helping them ground, and then you can have a conversation when everything is smooth and calm about that, letting them know that if they need something for you, it's okay for them to just ask. Being dismissive, this might happen with or without awareness, saying things like, oh, that isn't a big deal. You should be so grateful for all the things that you have, or just get over it. What's the deal here? So those things can actually be really hurtful to a kiddo. And the message that they learn is, it's not okay for me to feel or express myself. I have to dismiss and suppress my experiences. And of course, you're not trying to do that, but that can be the result if we use this kind of language around them. What if we say, oh, just do this? When we pop into problem-solving mode, because we've had more life experience and we can probably see a solution, and we haven't spent any time in that emotional place, because of the way the brain works, the kiddos can't necessarily pop into problem-solving mode as quickly. And they need to spend time, adults do too actually, in that emotional place to process what they're feeling and what they're experiencing before we move into that rational part of the brain and we move into problem solving. Additionally, little kiddos or youth, teenagers, don't have the same development in their prefrontal cortex. So they can't always see the solutions in the same way you can. They don't have that same ability to do abstract thinking. So when we solve the problem for them without being attuned and hearing their emotional experience, it can actually be dismissive and tells them that we just need to jump to solution without being present for our emotional experience. And again, can create that suppression, which for sure can lead to mental health difficulties down the road or in the moment. Knock it off, you're just being difficult. Telling our kiddo to stop doesn't mean they always have the ability to. If those emotions are really, really big and we're trying to put the lid on it and take kind of that control over the situation, they might not be able to. Even if we're telling them to stop, they might not have the ability in the moment to do that. And so we want to be aware of that as well. They're not trying to just be difficult. They might be so dysregulated that they actually can't gather their emotions and shut them down. Again, think about a time where you were so overwhelmed that you couldn't just stop. It's not that you didn't want to, perhaps, but you just weren't able to. It became too overwhelming. You became emotionally flooded and you couldn't just contain it. Getting louder than your child to try to either snap them out of it or get their attention, regain authority in that situation. Again, although we're trying to maybe contain the situation, pull our kid out of that and get them to connect with us, when we're louder, we can actually contribute to the dysregulation of the moment. Because we get louder, that raises the energy, that raises the emotion of the moment, and it can actually contribute to that. So actually getting really quiet can be incredibly powerful. And we have these beautiful things in our brains called mirror neurons. So because we are a bit of an authority figure in a kiddo's life, we are the parent or the care provider. When we get really quiet, eventually they're going to settle too, because those beautiful mirror neurons are going to want to try to match ours. There's a whole bunch there with attachment too, which I won't get into. I'll create another video later about that. Timeout. So how are you using them? Sometimes parents, we need timeouts too. We need a bit of a break to ground and regulate ourselves. But how are you using with your kiddos, or if at all? If we're segregating our kiddo, we're teaching them that we're not going to be present for them during times of dysregulation or upset or overwhelm. We're teaching them they have to go over here, be quiet, sort it out by themselves, or suppress it. If you are using a timeout to help them regulate, that can be helpful for some kiddos for sure, just that quiet. But we want to make sure that we're checking in with them. And maybe after a little bit of time when they've settled, that we're coming beside them to talk about what happened, not in a punitive way, but to talk about what happened, ask them how they're doing, what we can do to support them. And if they have the capacity to use abstract thinking, what would we do next time? So we don't want to use timeouts as a way to shun our kiddos and have them sort it out on their own. We want them to know that we're here with them to support them in times of distress. We definitely need to consider our kiddos' developmental stage. Depending on where they're at, what we're asking of them, they may or may not be able to do that. So we really want to be mindful when we're supporting them with emotional awareness, what their developmental stage is, what we have taught our child. So how do I respond when I'm really angry? How do I respond when I'm really overwhelmed? What kind of things do I do? Is my kid doing the same thing? Have they learned that from me or from another person in our life? And what my limitations might be. Maybe if my kiddo is really overwhelmed and expressing a certain type of behavior, that dysregulates me too much and I'm not the person to go and support them. So how then can I support my kiddo? Is there another adult in their life that can support them with that type of thing? Do I need to pull in a professional to offer them support? We still want to be with them the best we can and make sure that we get them the support, even if we aren't the person, and that's okay to be mindful of your own limitations as well. We all know that you love your kiddos. So how can you support your child? Here are some ideas. Take note of how you respond to emotional distress yourself and see if there's any learning or changes that you can do, because your kids are going to learn from what they see. So when you get overwhelmed, I do this with my kid actually, I go, and we breathe together. We often have a giggle, and it grounds me, and it's also teaching them that skill. So that kind of pops to number 2. Find a way to practice grounding skills in the moment. If you're in the car and kids are yelling and screaming and there's music going on and it's too much, turn the music off, ask everyone to be quiet, do some breathing together. Not only is it going to help regulate yourself, but it's also teaching them what to do to settle and ground and regulate. Beautiful to incorporate those skills in the moment with them. And please remember that your kiddos are expressing themselves the best that they can when they're in distress. We know that when we're in distress, our brains don't work properly. We become overwhelmed and dysregulated, and we can't access our rational thought as adults. But as kiddos, we haven't even fully developed that part of our brain. So of course, when they're expressing themselves, it might seem chaotic, it might not really make sense, but they're doing the best they can. So listen to what they're communicating, either through their words, through their actions, through their behaviors. There's a lot of information, and I have no doubt they're communicating very thoroughly. It just might not be through speech. And do your best. Practice your own self-compassion. When you become overwhelmed and maybe snap or yell or do something that doesn't feel right to you, and know that you're doing the best you can, and that's okay. Amends and coming alongside to say, hey, I did the best I could, and I'm so sorry that I did that. I want to do better next time, teaches them that it's also okay to make mistakes and that we can repair those moments in relationship. That's so beautiful and powerful, because things are going to happen. You're going to have ruptures in your relationship for sure, but when we can heal them and come back together, that's beautiful. And reach out for support for yourself. If you're feeling overwhelmed and not knowing what to do, please know that there's support out there, and you can reach out for some counseling or for some professional support if you need that, or call a friend. If you have a friend that you feel like you can trust and kind of has a similar parenting style as you, give them a call and talk it out. That can be really helpful too. Using kindness and compassion for yourself and with interactions with your kiddos. Remembering to breathe. Remember your child is doing the best that they can. And remember that you're doing the best you can too. There's a way that, in the same way that our kiddos learn from us, we too have learned from the family that we grew up with. And so it's possible that you might be carrying wounds or lessons from your childhood that are no longer serving you and helping you. And so maybe it's something that you need to do, is to look at those wounds that you're holding and are preventing you from being present and grounded with your kiddo. And in doing your own healing, that can change everything, can't it? Here's some more information, and I will put the links down below. That window of tolerance that I talked about can be really valuable just to understand it and know what's going on for your kiddo and for yourself when you're having difficulties. Adverse childhood experiences, sorry, there's a typo there. It's called adverse childhood experiences, is a fantastic study. There's tons of research that's been done through this and after this, so it can be really, really informative. And if you yourself are struggling with counseling, feel free to reach out to our team. We do have in-person and virtual counselors that can support you all throughout British Columbia. So feel free to reach out to us if that's helpful to you at all. This is the quote that I mentioned earlier. Challenging behavior occurs when the demands and expectations being placed on your child outstrip the skills they have to respond. And I believe it's my role as a parent to my kiddo to support him to develop those skills and to be mindful of the expectations and demands that I myself and the world are placing on him. So when he is having challenging behavior, that gives me information that something's not going great and he's struggling, and I need to do something different to check in and support him. That's all for today. I hope that that was helpful. I was really excited about putting this presentation together. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you do to be mindful and support your kiddos with their mental health. I'd love to hear from you. And we'll talk to you soon. Okay, everyone? Bye.